In this video, I shall be analyzing a game which was played in the final round of Goa International Chess Tournament between the veteran Grandmaster from Belarus, Alexei Fedorov, and the rising Indian star Grandmaster Mitrabha Guha. Alexei Fedorov was white, Mitrabha was black. The reason why I have chosen this game is that it was played in romantic style, which means the game resembled the type of chess which used to be played 150 years ago, where players used to sacrifice pieces and play more for aesthetic beauty rather than objective accuracy of chess. So let us see how this game turned out and how white played romantic chess and he sacrificed his pieces and attacked. It is white Alexei Fedorov against Mitrabha Guha, who was playing with black. White started with e4, black played e6, which is the French defense, and now instead of d4, white played f4. It's a rare move, but it's a playable move, of course. Fedorov had played this move previously, so I'm sure Mitrabha was not surprised after f4. But the first principle, if you want to play romantic chess in today's era, is that you have to take your opponent out of his preparations. So the move f4 is a relatively rare move, and it has the virtue of taking black out of his preparation. Black played d5, which is a typical French move, and white played e5. Black played c5. This is also a typical French move. Black takes space on the queen side and he prepares to open line for the queen's rook on the c file. Whenever white would play d4, black can exchange on d4 and utilize the c file for counterplay. Now here white played knight f3, black went knight c6, and white played c3. Now white wants to play d4, supported with his c3 pawn. Black played knight ge7, he is also bringing out his pieces, and white played knight a3 to support the d4 pawn with his knight. If he played d4 at once, black could exchange and put his knight on f5 with the idea of queen b6. After queen b6, three black's pieces would attack the d4 pawn, and white doesn't have, it's quite surprising, but white doesn't have a single good way of defending the d pawn. That is why white first played knight a3. He wants to put his knight on c2 and then play d4 at the right moment. Black played d4 himself. So black preempted white's idea and he did not allow white to play d4. Black is in a punishing mood. In this position, white played g3, which is a logical move. He wants to develop his bishop, but surprisingly, or technically, this is a theoretical novelty. As such, this position is not very common, but a few times this position had been reached previously, once by Fedorov himself. He had played bishop d3 in this position with the idea of playing bishop e4 and then following it up with d3 and development of queenside. But in this game he played g3. Black, he wants to put his bishop on g2, a strong diagonal, and black played b6 to neutralize white's g2 bishop. White played bishop g2, bishop b7, and white completed his kingside development with castles. Now black played queen d7. There was a point behind playing h5 first with the idea of putting his knight on f5, and the knight will not be harassed by g4. So this move h5 looks perfectly logical, but black played queen d7 which also has the idea of queen side, of castling on the queen side. Well, here white played knight b5. This is the most thematic move in this position. White wants to attack by posting his knight on d6. Knight d6 check is the threat. White's pawn on e5 is now looking dangerous. Black played knight f5 defending against white's knight d6, and white immediately went g4 pushing back the knight. The knight went to h6. White played h3 defending the g4 pawn, and now the knight on h6 is left totally on the edge, unable to participate on the queen side for defense. So the knight on h6 is more of a liability for black, and we shall see why. Now here black decided to go for long castle. We shall see what happens if black decided to castle on the king side. Bishop e7 looks very natural, but in this case white will simply play d3. After castle, a possible variation could be cd, cd and f5. This is the key move of the entire opening system by white. f5, opening the f file for the rook and opening the diagonal for this bishop. Now white is threatening to go f6. If black takes ef5, white has the move g5, trapping the knight on h6. And now we see why the knight on h6 is a liability for black. And also short castle. Note that the king on g8 has blocked the retreat square for the knight. So short castle was in fact a suicidal move. So that is why black decided to castle on the queen side. Now black wants to attack white's king. Both kings are on opposite flank. Well, the normal theory or guideline says that when we have kings on opposite sides of the board, we have to attack the opponent king fearlessly and quickly. And the player who starts attack first will usually have the initiative. So in this position, Fedorov played a4 immediately, trying to open the a file for the rook and also taking some space on the queen side. Black played d3. This is a fantastic move by Mitrabha. His idea is to split white's chess pieces into two halves, the queen side and king side. When black will attack white's king, the queen side pieces will not be able to cover on the king side. Well, the pawn on d3, and it basically divides, doesn't allow the white queen side pieces to shift on the king side. Now white played another fantastic move. It is white to play. Can you guess white's next move? White played b4, opening lines at the cost of a pawn. So this is the second principle. The first principle, you may recall, was that take your opponents out of theory. And the second principles of romantic chess is open lines against the opponent king. Don't care about material. So here white is sacrificing a pawn. Black can capture the b pawn, but then after bishop a3 we would have fantastic files, the b and the c files open against black king. And also once the b4 bishop is exchanged, the d6 square is weak. Note that this bishop is defender of d6 square, but if you exchange these bishops, the knight can enter on d6 and this will be very dangerous piece. So this was white's idea when he played b4. Black played king b8, overprotecting a7 so that the knight can now move freely without caring about the a7 pawn. Here white exchanged on c5, the bishop developed from c5 check, and white played king h1. Black went a6. Now the second very important moment of the game. Where should the knight go? Think for a while and find out what Alexei Fedorov did in this position. Well, white played a brilliant move, that is bishop a3. The knight did not go anywhere. He left the knight on b5, he sacrificed a piece, and this is what romantic chess is all about. You open lines at the cost of material. Even if you don't have anything immediate, you will get something in the long run. And here, well, after AB, bishop c5, first white extends the piece and played AB. Well, initially when white played bishop a3, black could not believe that white has not moved his knight, and he could not believe he is not winning in this position. But after some analysis, he found out that actually white has a dangerous attack in return for the piece, and in the long run it will be difficult for black to defend. Well, if you think this from purely logical angle, then we can find out, we can deduce that the bishop on c1, white has managed to get rid of his problem piece, which was the bishop on c1, which was unable to develop, and all white's pieces can participate on the attack against black king. Whereas, well, I can just show you a couple of variations to illustrate that white's attack is very dangerous, and black's extra piece is the knight on h6, which cannot participate in defense. Also in this position, the rook on h8 will take some time to participate in defense. So white has more number of attackers than black's defender, and that is why this position is good for white. Now here black played knight e7. Well, white went b6, which is a small inaccuracy, and then black played knight d5, centralizing his pieces. Now in this position, black could have got knight c8 once again, but then a typical variation would be white would go queen b3, shifting his queen to the queen side and defending the b6 pawn. Black would go knight g8, now bringing his knight to the queen side, and if black manages to get his knight to the queen side, he will be able to successfully consolidate his position. And remember, he has an extra piece, so if black defends, he will be winning. The best move for white is knight g5 for a couple of reasons. First, white wants to get rid of this bishop, and secondly, he is preventing black from playing knight e7, because in this case knight f7 wins the second pawn for a piece and also an exchange. He will capture a rook for his knight, and he will have a perfectly good position materially. So he is preventing knight e7. A typical move in this position may go bishop g2, king g2, queen b7 check, the queen covering on the queen side, the king moving away from check, king g3, and now h6, planning to push the knight back. Again, it is white to play. White has a fantastic resource, keeping in the spirit of romantic chess. He can sacrifice another piece for a pawn, but the idea is white is gaining time to double on the a file, to triple on the a file. He will play rook a6 with the idea of, if the queen comes back, rook a1, and white wants to triple on the queen side and play rook a8, checkmate. Surprisingly, despite being two pieces up, black is unable to defend. Black played knight d5. He didn't allow white all those the idea of exchanging the b7 bishop. He centralized his piece, and now black is trying to put pressure on b6. and he's trying to defend. White played knight g5. Black went f5. He wants to create some attack or counterplay on the king side before white can overwhelm black on the queen side. So after rook a7 pinning the b7 bishop, black exchanged the pawns and he played c4, not allowing the queen to go to b3. So in this position, white's queen defends the g4 pawn, black can capture g4, and suddenly black can have some counterplay. So this is black's idea of how he can defend. White to play another fantastic move. Queen a1. White sacrificed the pawn on g4. He wants to triple on the queen side and win. Here knight takes g4, queen a5. White is tripling on the queen side. Black has almost nothing to do. Black played queen c6, while putting some pressure on the diagonal and also putting some pressure against the b6 pawn. White played rook a1. Now he is looking for a chance to deliver a checkmate on a8. Black played rook d7, trying to strengthen the second rank defense. In this position, white played another fantastic move. It is white to play and win. White played knight e6, trying to displace or move this queen away from c6 so that white can play rook a8 check. The queen is not controlling a8 anymore. So after bishop a8, queen a8, there is an instant checkmate. So after knight e6, black first tried some counter attack. Knight f2 check. The king went up. Black repeated knight g4 check. The king went up again. White's king is looking for shelter where there will be no checks. And black played g5, opening line against white's king. So it is attack versus counter attack. It is white to play. White played rook takes b7, a fantastic move, removing the defender of the king. Now white is a piece down. He's sacrificing an exchange, so he is a rook down at this point. Black played queen b7. White went knight c5, attacking the queen, attacking the rook. Black went gf4, check. And the king is looking for a safe square. The safe square is h4. So this is typically what happens in romantic chess. The king moves up, there is chaos everywhere, but there's also beauty of sacrifices. Now here black played queen c6. Knight d7 check. If the queen captures the d7 knight, there is queen a8 checkmate. So black moved king c8. White played queen a8 check. In this position, black played king d7, and after rook a7 check, black resigned because black is losing a queen with a check. But had black exchanged the queens after queen a8 check, white would play rook a8 check, king d7, and now the winning move for white is simply advance the pawn b7. Well, the idea is to capture the rook on h8 and then promote the pawn b8. Of course, white can capture the rook on h8, but that would allow black to take this pawn and keep the fight for some time. But after b7, white wins instantly because there is no way how black can defend against rook a8 and promotion. So this is how Alexei Fedorov, the veteran grandmaster and perhaps the only player who plays romantic chess even today, he managed to defeat the rising Indian star Mitrabha Guha in, in the Goa International Chess. I hope you like this particular video, and a disclaimer that this particular game is was presented because it was beautiful. Both sides might have made lot of mistakes, but romantic chess is not about mistakes, it's about beauty. So hope we'll meet again next week with another nice video of Game of the Week. Thanks and goodbye.